Turning soil into dead ground is easy, but bringing it back to life and protecting it from degrading again, that's incredibly hard. In China, they've been planting millions of trees pretty successfully. There's still a long way to go before all barren land is restored. The Chinese are steadily moving in that direction. In some places, holistic planned grazing is used for recovery. It's a way of fixing past mistakes. Back when livestock was actually the main cause of land degradation. In North America, they take a more interesting approach to land restoration. They're actively bringing back bison and beavers, whose activity can help return the land to its original state. But that's not even the most amazing thing. You know what they do in Africa? In regions losing tens of thousands of acres annually because of desertification, they let tortoises out. First off, how can tortoises even survive in the desert? Second, why release them into such harsh conditions in the first place? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out today. The Sahara Desert, which covers more than 3.5 million square miles, is one of the harshest and most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. In the central areas, yearly rainfall barely hits 2 inches. And overall, in the desert, it rarely goes over 4 inches. That said, even if some rain does fall, it quickly disappears into thin air. Evaporation can reach up to 236 in a year. Daily temperature swings in some places reach over 54 degrees Fahrenheit. During the day, the thermometer climbs above 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and at night, it drops to 50 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Overall, the conditions make it impossible to live normally or do any kind of farming. On the southern edge of the Sahara lies the Sahel region, a transitional strip up to 620 miles wide, where the average yearly rainfall ranges from 4 to 27 inches. The soils here are always short on moisture. So, traditional crops regularly fail to produce a harvest and grazing lands are depleted. And you know what's the worst part? Over time, things just keep getting worse. The desert keeps spreading. This process doesn't mean the boundary of the existing desert is moving. Rather, it's the degradation of productive lands in dry and semi-dry areas on the edge of the Sahara caused by a mix of climate factors and human activity. In the end, when degradation hits its peak and normal soil disappears, those areas turn into something that looks like just plain sandy deserts. Turns out that during the desertification process, the Sahel region, which includes the territories of Mali, Niger, Chad, Senegal, Mauritania, and Burkina Faso loses about 49 to 74,000 acres of fertile land every year. The Sahara is slowly creeping forward, cutting off people's already limited chances to farm and raise livestock, which, by the way, 90% of settlements in these countries depend on. To escape the Sahara and bring life back to degraded lands, a group of African countries launched a massive initiative called the Great Green Wall. Originally, the plan was to plant an unbroken strip of trees 9 miles wide and nearly 4,800 m long from the Atlantic coast in Senegal to Djibouti on the Red Sea. Overall, the country set an ambitious goal to restore 247 million acres of degraded land. However, by the end of 2023, only about 18% of the planned area had been reforested, with any real progress seen in just a few countries. Ethiopia claims to have restored up to 37 million acres and Nigeria around 12 million acres, while Chad and Mali fell noticeably short of their targets. The main problem is chronic lack of funding and coordination. But there's another one, maybe even more serious. The classic model of mass seedling planting turned out to be unsuitable for large areas without reliable irrigation. Lots of young trees died because of droughts and windstorms. There weren't enough trained people to look after the seedlings, and local communities weren't engaged enough. So, the green walls that were planted either withered away or got pulled out to be used as fuel. In response to this, the project architects revisited the whole approach, broadening the scope of work. Today, besides planting trees, projects are underway to restore ancient rainwater harvesting systems, introduce agroforestry practices with fruit-bearing crops, and launch initiatives to preserve high-intensity natural regeneration areas. But even taking these adjustments into account, the progress is slower than expected. By July 2024, official data shows about 74 million acres restored, which is only a third of the target. Overall, we need to find other ways to help restore degraded lands and slow the spread of the Sahara, like tortoises. No, releasing the regular tortoises that many people know onto the dying lands near the Sahara, that's, let's say, kind of pointless because they'll just die from totally unsuitable conditions. Through evolution, a species adapted even to that extreme harshness came about, the African spurred tortoise or satyr. Now imagine how much a person's activity can impact even such a resilient species. Right now this tortoise species is endangered and lives in only 16.7% of the area where it used to be found. The reason's well as always livestock. The thing is, Sahara tortoises are herbivores and cows, sheep, and goats eat everything in their path. That's why even these well-adapted desert tortoises are vanishing quickly from their habitats. At the same time, some researchers say that the sharp drop in the number of these animals is one of the reasons why efforts to restore degraded areas near the Sahara aren't working. That's why skater tortoises are now being reintroduced into arid regions. One of the most significant population recovery programs is happening in Senegal. There the Foundation Ensemble has been reintroducing dozens of specimens into the Furlough Biosphere Reserve since 2006. It's important to note that the Senegalese program has been a success. 80% of the tortoises survived in the wild and soon young ones started showing up, and most importantly we can already talk about changes. Maybe not large-scale ones but still brought by these animals to the land that are rapidly disappearing under pressure from the Sahara and human activity. First thing to mention is that satyr tortoise really love to dig. With their strong paws made for burrowing, they're constantly turning over and loosening the soil like a natural plow. Now, let's move to the Sahel. The land, which is degrading or has already become unusable, is covered with a hard crust that blocks both oxygen and the occasional rainfall. The situation with water's downright grim, it can't penetrate the crust and just flows away, causing erosion in the process. Then come the diggers. So, Sahara tortoises. In certain spots, they loosen the soil, letting oxygen and water in, which at least gives the land a chance to become a bit more fertile. But in terms of scale, this doesn't compare to proper livestock grazing. The loosening is only local. Why is that? Well, how do you think these tortoises escape harsh conditions? Using their feet, they dig burrows. And not just any burrows. Researchers note that those are massive tunnels stretching up to 98 feet in length and 49 feet deep. There. The tortoise hides from the sun and the heat while also staying safe from predators. Oh, and another thing. These tortoises help restore degraded soil this way. It's really simple. Rain falls, water gets into the burrow, then travels deep underground and spreads far and wide. Due to this, way more underground areas receive their key resource. The same goes for oxygen. It filters underground and spreads through the whole tunnel network, improving the soil even more. As a result, thanks to these tortoises, small oases appear in degraded areas where flora can at least take hold and develop. Sure, they didn't release millions of tortoises in Senegal. But even the initial few dozen individuals can help slow down desertification. And by the way, Sahara tortoises have more to offer. As we've already mentioned, these tortoises eat grass. To be more specific, some species are omnivores, but sakis are strictly herbivores. At the same time, they're among the biggest tortoises in the world. On average, a male weighs around 178 pounds. And some even grow up to 264 pounds. That's why their diet includes a lot of grass. And while munching on it, they actually boost biodiversity in dead zones since they take in seeds along with their food. The seed's journey begins when a tortoise eats it. The tortoise's slow digestion can take days or even weeks, during which it covers long distances. As a result, the seeds end up far from where they were eaten. Also, the seeds might well end up where the tortoise has already dug its tunnel systems, making the soil more suitable for plants to grow. As a result, the seeds get a chance to sprout, boosting the area's biodiversity. But wait a minute, aren't the seeds exposed to dangers when they leave the tortoise? Thing is, once the seeds are outside, they get covered in a kind of armor made of poop. On top of that, there's something else to point out. Where tortoises pass through, the soil gets wetter in spots and also absorbs more oxygen. That's a big deal, but it doesn't mean plants can just take off, since the barren land around the Sahara mostly lacks the nutrients flora needs. Luckily for the soil, scatter tortoise droppings are packed with nutrients. They contain nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. If you watch our videos, you know these are the key elements plants need for proper growth. Without them, plants won't grow even in good conditions. Besides that, excrement is packed with magnesium, calcium, and many other elements that are also super important for plants. And so, the tortoise brought seeds to a new spot where tunnels were already dug. That is, the soil was ready. Then come the droppings, releasing nutrients. The result is the moved seeds now have everything they need to grow, turning into little tortoise oases in the middle of the Sahel's dead zones. And what if we imagine a situation where the tortoise hasn't yet enriched the area with its droppings, boosting the nutrient content of the soil? What helps here is that the seeds themselves come out together with the droppings. It turns out that the seed's armor is instantly supplied with everything it needs to grow. So the waste products of these creatures, often all on their own, are basically a bomb for increasing biodiversity. Well, after that comes an increase in the number of animals. Yes, the Sahel isn't exactly a haven for thousands of different species, but still some creatures do show up in the small oases created by the tortoises. First come the invertebrates and then those who feed on them. As a result, biodiversity grows from all sides. And once again, tortoise burrows play a very important role. The thing is, they also give shelter from the heat to other creatures that can't stand being out in the blazing sun when the temperature's high. If people don't destroy these little oases, they become a great addition to other measures aimed at fighting desertification. Did you know that endangered animals are often really hard to reintroduce because they struggle to breed in captivity? Well, that doesn't apply to African spurred tortoises, which is why bringing them back to protect a green Africa is literally one of the best things you can do. African spurred tortoises breed surprisingly easy in captivity. With minimal effort in specialized breeding centers. They quickly move on to regular reproduction and the eggs almost always hatch into healthy young. This fertility makes them one of the most intensively bred tortoises in the world and greatly simplifies the process of their reintroduction in the Sahel, since stationary centers can release hundreds of young into the desert every year without risking the extinction of the wild population. For this reason, reintroduction work is carried out not only in the Furlough Biosphere Reserve in Segal. The non-profit SOP and the Village Dista are involved in this effort with support from the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation. Working together with SOPAM, the Oceanographic Museum of Monaco runs programs for reintroducing and breeding tortoises, regularly sending young tortoises from Monaco to Segal. At the same time, the Tortoise and Freshwater Turtle Specialist Group coordinates the selection of safe, protected areas where the young can be released. There's also the British Chelonia Group, which provides financial and logistical support, taking part in programs aimed at returning tortoises to the wild. These programs are also carried out in other Sahel countries where populations are at risk of extinction, including Mali, Niger, Chad, and Burkina Faso. They're often run in close cooperation with local communities and based in national parks to help protect the tortoises and their habitats. Thus, the effort to save the rare tortoise is a broad international collaboration aimed at preserving this unique species across almost its entire historic range. And in turn, everyone fully understands that restoring the species means saving the territories from the Sahara. African spurred tortoises are far from the only species being reintroduced in the Sahel, partly to help fight desertification.